begin. Welcome to the next webinar in the series entitled Throwing Away the Menu, Improving Sexual Assault Services for Survivors and Agencies. My name is Erica Blackwood. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the SADI specialist for NCCASA. I am also joined today by NCCASA staff member Alexandra Smith, our training specialist who also uses she, her pronouns, who will be co-facilitating technology during our time together today. Our focus in this series is to help those serving sexual assault survivors across the state to improve their sexual assault services by reimagining the menu of services agencies currently provide. The goal is to help agencies with their leadership and staff to create accessible, culturally responsive, and trauma-informed approaches to the unique needs survivors are facing. Before we get started with today's webinar, Meaningful Services for Survivors, just a few housekeeping items. All webinars are recorded and will be available on NCCASA's YouTube page afterwards. Certificates will be available at the end of the entire series, and our training specialist, Alexandra Smith, will be handling all the distribution of those. We are hosting today's webinar in a meeting format. So if you have a question, you can use the chat to ask a question, raise your hand, and we will acknowledge when the presenters are ready for questions. Or you can send a private message to any one of the facilitators. Also, please be mindful of taking care of yourself first. I am so thankful that you all have joined us today, but we do understand this moment of active trauma that we are all collectively a part of. If you need to step away, please do so. Or if you're in need of additional assistance, you can send a private message to any of the facilitators. Today, we have the honor of welcoming back Mira Youssef, who is joined today by Guadalupe Lopez, both from the Elevate Uplift team. And so I will now turn it over to Mira and Guadalupe to introduce themselves with their pronouns. So turning us over to you guys.
Hello, everyone. I have to do a little because I have a very bad, really bad allergies. But my name is Mira Youssef. I'm with Monsoon Asians and Pacific Islanders. Oh my God, Monsoon Asians and Pacific Islanders Ending in Solidarity, and also with NAPISEV, which is the National API Ending Sexual Violence. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And we are one of the project partners of RSP and NSVRC and also MUSAC that basically constitute Elevate Uplift.
Well, bonjour, everybody. My name is Guadalupe Lopez. I am a citizen of Leech Lake, Band of Ojibwe. I'm also a Purepecha Indian from Michoacan, Mexico. I've been working for the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition since 2007. Let's see, I am the Elevate Uplift staff at MUSAC that helps work with our amazing group of the 4 organizations. I was a part of the demonstration, the Sexual Assault Demonstration Initiative for the, as the TA provider and support for Gila River and all the other ones, but specifically Gila River because our expertise is with Indian country and indigenous communities and Native communities. And I'm excited to visit with you guys today. So I'm just excited. Mira and I were just talking about it this morning and how we want the time to go.
Yes.
So
one of our practices, also I just want to add that I have met Guadalupe through the SADI project as well. We've been through this for 10, 11 years together. And I was the so-called, I was focusing on the New York Asian Women's Center and now called Womankind. So one of our practices for Elevate Uplift and also MUSAC and also NAPISEV's work, we usually do a check-in. So we do a check-in of any kind of fun things, deep questions, or whatever that just to kind of ground the space, right? So Guadalupe, do you want to lead this?
Sure. So today we're going to do this as like a weather report. So check into your feelings, check into your environment. Where are you at? How you woke up this morning? How are you feeling right now? Maybe it was different than how you woke up. And if you were a type of weather, what kind of weather would you be? Now, if some people don't feel comfortable like speaking or don't have the capability, or if they're calling from phone, which I don't think anybody is, it doesn't look like it, you can feel free to put your answer in the chat too, and we'll acknowledge it that way. But how we usually do it is go ahead. I can pick some people because usually when you say, who wants to go first, everybody kind of looks at each other and doesn't want to answer. So if you don't mind, I would like to, I'll pick a random person. And Kelly Keith. Oh, excuse me. I did not put my pronouns in. I identify as she, her, and hers. So I apologize for that. I'm sorry. Kelly, would you like to go first?
Sure. It's nice to meet you. My weather, oh boy, it's been a rough one. We're a little cloudy and foggy. Maybe some drizzles, but things are looking up. But yeah, it's nice to be here again. Thank you so much.
Good. How about Heather Chavez?
I would say maybe a little bit overcast.
Gabriela?
Cloudy and variable, but the sun's peeking through.
Nice. Leslie Lane? If people wanted to put it in their chat, they can go ahead, even if I don't call on them, if they know that they didn't want, or if they wanted to put it that way, go ahead, feel free. Okay, Regina, cloudy. Leslie Lane, stormy.
Stormy.
Cynthia, sunny and some rain. Cassie, overcast with a chance of rain. Right on. How about Pamela G? How are you feeling today? Okay, we can move on to Janelle. Janelle?
The sun is shining over here. Shiny and warm.
Yay.
Nice. Diana?
Sunny.
Oh, Camilla, sunny. Diana, sunny. Cool. I don't want to miss anybody. Let's see.
Erica.
Erica.
Yes.
Like my coworker would say, probably cloudy with a chance of meatballs.
Right on.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for doing that. That actually kind of like, I think when you're doing a check-in, sometimes people don't have the emotional capacity to say what all that's in their heart because it's just too much, and sometimes they don't know what they're feeling. They're too overwhelmed. Visiting with our community and relatives when we're doing advocacy, that piece that could be just like a quick check-in. Like you can do another experiential check-in is like if you were a body of water, what would you be? You know, how are you like a drop of water? Are you a raging ocean? Are you a smooth river? You know, like, and it really gives you a temperature of how that person is that day. And so like if you have some important, if they're saying like I'm like a raging river, you might want to be in space with that while you're helping them and supporting them with whatever task or whatever thing that you have ahead of you doing that together. So just wanted to share a couple of little experiential things that you can do with people. And it's great with you if you're a child advocate or working with children or youth or adolescents. It's a great way to check into. And yourself, like if I was a body of water, or if I was a tree, what would I be? You know, that kind of. that kind of exercise. Cool.
So today, I think we're focusing on the traits of an effective advocate, right? So I think Guadalupe and I will just facilitate this discussion. We want it more a conversation among us because we have different wisdom, expertise, right? All of us in this space. So we will just share. You could either say it, state it, or write it up on the chat. You could write a poem in the chat if you want to. You can do that. You can do whatever that is comfortable for you, right? So we can start with Guadalupe. I have a question for you then.
Yes.
Okay. So think of a time when you are seeking help. What was important to you? And what kind of a person you needed at that moment?
Okay. I was looking for I was seeking assistance to refinance my house. And so one of the important characteristics that I was seeking for this person, they had to know they had to be very knowledgeable about what that means, like contemporary, like the rates, the processes. So they needed to be knowledgeable. Another important characteristic that I was looking for was somebody not to make me feel that because I didn't have a lot of knowledge around that, they weren't going to make me feel dumb, or they weren't going to invalidate, and like make me feel uncomfortable, or like, what do you mean you don't know this? Like it was all common sense to everyone. So I really didn't want to go to anybody that made me feel incompetent or condescending. And there was a piece where I needed to trust them, because that's a lot of money to be switching up around. So there was a trust piece. So I was also going in not just with my strategic brain. I was going in with my gut. What does my gut say about this person? Like, do I trust this person? Like, do they have commonalities? Are they going to understand my position as coming from a brown Native woman, single mother, middle class or lower class? Maybe I'm just making myself higher up in the rung of what it means to refinance the house. I didn't want to get over on. So I was looking for these things, and I was looking for an organization or a lender or something that was going to be really very transparent and very very helpful, and give me all the options, not just the ones they thought I should go, right? Like, this would make the best choice for you. So that's my experience that I would like to bring forward to everybody.
I love the way that you're framing this, right? Because it's not starting with trauma immediately, or with with the work that we do, but you're using like this practical things that someone will need it, right? So you're doing it in a, like, for me, like a very safe way in discussing this issue or this topic of advocacy. What does it mean, right? So I'm kind of just wondering too, what about the others? Do you have an example? Do you have something to share of, like, think of a time when you are seeking help, whatever it will be? What was more important to you? Taking time in responding is fine. I love this kind of silence, and I respect this kind of silence. That means that we are thinking. Yeah, so yes, Heather, just unmute yourself.
Well, I was thinking of a time when I had to go and apply for Medicaid for my daughter. and I really don't like asking for help at all. And I used to work there, so the whole thing was very stressful for me. But the worker that I saw, my daughter had been hurt playing basketball, and she was talking to me about the time when her child was hurt playing basketball, and she just made me feel very comfortable, not judged in any way. And it was just such a good experience. And I really feel that it was because of her, and, the way she treated me. It felt very light. And it was just a really good experience. But I think it was just really not feeling, I guess, judged for being there. So I think of that often. It was a very good experience.
Thank you, Heather. So Kelly chatted, I wished I could put a heart on that. We know everything, and asking for help makes us vulnerable. You actually can put a heart on it. I don't know if you all know your reactions, but if you go into the lower panel or into the lower bar, you can put a heart. You can put a, like, I thought that was funny. There's a whole bunch of, there's a thumbs up, there's a no, there's a slower, faster, a celebration one. So if you want to like engage in that way when somebody's speaking, it's fun. I like it. Thank you. How about anybody else have something that was important to them when they were seeking support and assistance? Kelly.
This is very recent. My dog got very sick about almost 4 weeks ago. He collapsed, and we didn't know what was going on. And I'm not a veterinarian. I grew up on a farm, so I know some stuff, but I know not enough to take care of a dog that's not being able to walk. So we took him to the vet, and it was an emergency vet. My husband, I was actually volunteering. I was doing construction on a transitional home for previously released women. And my husband calls, and he's in a panic. And he's like, you need to speak to the vet. He's like, I don't understand what she's saying. And she can't seem to break it down into terms that I can understand. And so I talked to the vet, and on the phone, and here I am, I'm like 45 miles away, and I can't be with my dog. And she's talking to me like, somebody said when people are condescending. And I got really upset. And I was like, look, I'm not trying to be rude. I said, I'm under a lot of duress right now. This dog is my husband's like therapy dog. And I'm like, please don't, I said, please don't talk to me like that. I'm like, I just need you to explain what my options are. And, is my dog going to be okay? And she kind of found her humanity for a minute and was like, this is what we can do. But I think in that moment, I didn't need, as logical and technical as I can be, and I know that I can be a robot sometimes with my emotions. In that moment, I didn't need that. I needed someone to say, we're going to work really hard, and we're going to do this together. And I'm going to be here for you to lean on, just something. I mean, it seems silly, and I get a little upset because he has a long road to recovery. He's not walking yet. He has to have help. But it's just, I think sometimes in that moment, you need not the explanations. You need not all of the jargon. You just need somebody to say, hey, I understand that you're scared, you're stressed, you're sad. And I'm here to help. You just want that support, I guess, is to sum it up in my very long-winded way. You need support sometimes. And I didn't feel like I was getting it.
Right. Thank you. And I seen 2 people put in the chat, Leslie and Cynthia put some comments in the chat. Someone who does not seem to be in a hurry and will take time to listen and make you feel important. And Cynthia had said when they were seeking assistance during the time, they had some physical issues and they needed a doctor who was honest and caring. So with the people who shared in the chat and the people who shared verbally about some characteristics of like, well, what's important to us, you know, when we're asking for support, I think that there's a whole bunch of things that go in and out and weave into what we're asking for when we're asking a vet, when we're asking providers or support systems for, and how does that weave into advocacy, right? And also to notice that when we are advocacy programs, or working at, you know, to end gender-based violence or community organizing or systems change work, or however we are structured to do we do our work, that a lot of times we unintentionally or why can't I remember the word?
Unintended.
Yes, intentionally get so busy and wrapped up where, like how you said, Kelly, we're like, I can be a robot sometimes. Me too. Me too. Sometimes I don't take a breath because I'm like, I got 3 people waiting. I know I need to get to all 3 of them. Okay, what do I do? And then I'm just like, and then this is where the menus come in, right? Because they're helpful, because they be like, okay, well, what do you need? I'm trying to like, you know, like whatever, help in the most fastest way possible. And I think the capacity of advocacy is to see the whole person. And so maybe this could be a question for you all, but this is also, maybe we want to talk about this. So I'm gonna leave this up to you because this is your time. When we are thinking about when a relative or a community member walks through, and I say relative interchangeably to survivors, victims, whatever. I don't choose to call them clients because it kind of separates a little bit different for me, but that's just my preference. All of those things that we shared about when we're asking for help are still on top of maybe a victimization, still dealing with trauma, right? I was just assaulted 2 days ago and my dog is sick. And I was assaulted when I was 7 and it's coming up and I still need to refinance my house, right? So all of the whole thing of the person, how welcoming are we to the whole person versus just the one incident of violence, and why they are coming to us because of that place. So I think I'll like tailor it back a little bit and ask the group of how that sits for you, for me saying that. Do we think we're doing a good job with seeing the whole person? Are we just only pinpointing like only the violence that they're surviving or the trauma?
When I work with my clinicians, one of the things I think that we fall into is remembering to listen to what is important to that person in front of us at that moment. So, we're in a DVSA agency, we're kind of focused on this. And in our heads, it's like, this has got to be the most important thing because this is what our job is, this is what we're focused on. But kind of what you were saying is, well, wait a minute. And this is what I tell my clinicians is, you may think that this is the worst, whatever this is the worst things that could have happened to them. This is what we need to talk about in therapy. This is what we need to address. That's not necessarily what the person in front of you is feeling at that moment. And that importance of saying, okay, getting back to that, the key part of any kind of advocacy is listening, and asking, what do you want help with, as opposed to, I've got my hammer, you better be a nail.
Totally agree, Gabrielle. Because I think that is one of the Sadie lessons learned, right? Is especially for dual programs is when you're working with a DV survivor, it's all about these tangible outcomes. When for SA survivors, like for a DV survivor, it's like you find their housing and you feel satisfied as an advocate, thinking that you already like have assisted them because you have found a job or a housing for them. But maybe they are also SA survivor and they need that emotional support. They needed someone to say, just say, I am here just to listen. Um, and I think sometimes with DV advocates, that is the hardest thing, not being able to see something that they can give to the victim or survivor, right? But when in reality, that person might just need someone to just, talk to, listen to, come and say, hey, I'm triggered today. Can I have your 15 minutes from you just so for you to like, just to listen to me? Yeah. Guadalupe or anyone? Yeah. Yes. That's so true, Gabriel. Oh my God. Yes. Done something. What do you think that is? Why is it, why is because I always think of like I know I kind of know the answer in some ways. Like there's a satisfaction, like if you've assisted someone, right? But is that enough?
I think there is that piece of like, yeah, of course you feel satisfied if you're able to say, look what I did, but there's more to it. We live in a society that is very focused on kind of concrete evidence, right? I mean, the big deal is evidence-based treatment and all of that kind of stuff. And if you go to court, what is the evidence? And so we're really, as a society, programmed to think that way. And being able to take a step back from that and not worry about outcomes, I think, we're taking the pressure off, not just ourselves, but we're taking off the pressure off the people we're sitting with. And I don't think we want to put that pressure on them.
Yeah, that pressure of like the outcomes, because of like sometimes we are just following our grants, right? Like that's so important for us to even just survive, not thinking of like what the community needs or what the individuals who are coming to us need. It's so interesting that Janelle kind of like what they have chatted, what they have written in the chat is something that we are basically going to ask. So maybe we could discuss that now, Guadalupe, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I also wanted to what you said, Mir, before we get into that. I
Mhm.
also want to like just okay. So if you go to your reactions, you can raise your hand or you can put a thumbs up. Let's use there's a, I don't know, maybe if you don't have it updated, you might not have a yes or a no check. I have one question to ask you, and we can do this by a poll. Do your organizations identify as a service provider? Go ahead and, okay, so Erica said yes.
1, 2.
Okay. Regina?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
yes,
Yeah.
okay.
I think majority.
So I just want to break that word down a little bit. Service, provider. So if that is in our language and that's the way I see our organization, then we will behave in such a way.
Mm.
We are here to provide a service, and that service is to give you A, B, C, D. And these are our 4 things we give you. And so how do we like think outside of that?
Yeah.
How do we ask our community to dream up some work? Or dream up of how they get to dictate how we work with them, and not like necessarily always the funder, right? And how do we advocate big systems change for like, well, my community is asking for way different things than what you think is I can provide as support and service to my community. Okay, we can get back to that, but I wanted to, well, let's go back to what you said, Mira, of
So maybe we could go to Janelle's comment and then we could continue with yours, because I think yours is crucial. Or maybe what do you all think? I think, but then defining a word, because that's like the, like service provider, I think that's also as crucial, because then we could kind of like figure out the boundaries. I mean, this is so important about boundaries. What do you think? What should we start with boundaries and then go back?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just read what Janelle had written. Some of my coworkers teased me because I could be on the phone for hours or meeting in person with a client for hours. So how do you take the time for your clients and also keep boundaries of time? I feel like if they need 2 hours, then they need 2 hours. It's real. This is so real. First, what came up? What is your feeling when you read this? When you heard it? What are your reactions? Like, what are your gut feelings? I love that you said that. It is the same for me. Explain that, Cassie. It's like, okay, so I'm going to say for me, I'm already just tired of reading that, because I was like, wow, that is a lot of hours holding space for someone. And then I think about also the emotional stuff that will be given to me, right? So I'm really thinking about all of that. It's like, how then do I also take care of myself while I'm holding that space for someone for 2 hours? Those are the things that came like in my gut feeling, oh my God, I'm already tired just like thinking about that. What are your gut feelings?
I mean, I'll jump in on the conversation too, because that was something that I did often with when I provided direct service. Is I know I worked from a place where I know that sexual violence is not linear healing, and I can't expect a person, one day you're sitting in and the conversation is great, we're talking about your kids and nothing's wrong, and then the next time, it could really be very different. So I was able to hold that space and manage my client load and try to balance the time. But I'll be honest with you, Mira, yes, that caused some burnout, because when you're holding space for clients for that long of a time, especially when they're maybe in an emotional crisis or something, like you're soaking all of that in. And then if it's early enough in the day and you still have other clients, then you have to take in some more emotional stuff. And it's really hard to balance and try to get out of that. So yeah, even though I was able to, for my clients, hold spaces where we can be in conversation for 2 hours, or I can talk to you, every day until you feel comfortable enough to handle things on your own. But yeah, you get to a point of burnout much faster than you would if you hadn't done that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I think this is where, for me, what effective advocacy is also being honest about those like, the you holding space, and then also you as the advocate also having the space to heal from those things that you will basically accumulate, right? So for me, it's not sometimes just about the victim or survivor that you're assisting, but you yourself should also be taking care of yourself, because the burnout is real. And then sometimes, most of the time, we are also survivors. We have family members who are survivors that we are also holding. So if we are going to say that we want the victim survivor to be whole, but it's also us being our whole selves, but knowing those kind of boundaries at the same time, right? Guadalupe?
So when Erica and Mira and then the chat was going, I was thinking of something. I almost like seen like this whole picture of what happens, because I think in a certain time before, and there's reasons why, like our menus started, right? Different disciplines, different entities, community entities came in and kind of influenced our work in a different way. Law enforcement, prosecution, medical, they informed us once we started to build relationships with those service providers or those practitioners and those things. But I was also thinking of, and this is not to say, like, you're talking about burnout. And so I think because what happens is we might feel that we the boundary piece, what do we do? How do we take care of ourselves? Do our organizations even have good policies for us to take care of ourselves? And what does that mean? Or are we supposed to work and work and work until we have nothing left to give? And that's why we have such high turnover rate as advocates.
Was the other thing I wanted to bring up about, the work that Sadie does, is it kind of addresses that, right? And that's the part that I really want to lift up in all of this, is that you have advocates who are doing that type of work and devoting that type of time to clients, but you have an organization that is still functioning as an organization and not necessarily building a community of care and supporting people who are doing that type of work, on top of the fact that you got those survivor advocates in your agency, right, who are also still dealing with their own healing and coming to terms with their own stuff, right? And how then do we encourage agencies to, especially particularly leadership, to build those like communities of care and not just tell the people, well, you need to be doing self-care, you self-care, right? How do we build that into organizational capacity?
I think one thing is having the leadership to be on board, right? Creating worker-centered. When we think about survivor-centered, we also need to think about worker-centered, staff-centered, where good benefits, you have, benefit, like you have really good vacation hours, you have good salary, right? Those are the things that basically supports an advocate to do 2 hours of holding space, to be able to say and debriefing with someone right afterwards. So I think it's up to the leadership to create those. That's why for Sadie, it is crucial for us when we're doing training that the executive director, the leadership is part of the training in order to create those changes within. Because just like you said, Erica, without their support, without policies, without any kind of benefits for the staff, it's not going to work. Right. So, yeah, sabbaticals. Guadalupe, you have anything to add to that?
I just wanted to say I almost seen how it can easily go, and like pay attention to, like, if you were just doing like an audit, a mental audit of your organization, of how many advocates cycled through in the last 4 years. I mean, this situation is a little different right now because of the pandemic and all of the like the civil unrest in a lot of different states, but I think that there's something to be said of like who's missing. And I know that that this discussion is specifically for traits of an effective advocate, but you can't have an effective advocate if they're not being treated well in the organization. And then you might have an effective advocate that will burn out and leave, or will start to just have a little bit of some like less capacity to meet the community where they need to be met. And then what happens is the telephone game of like, don't go to this place. No, I got treated really bad there. Or they act like they don't care. You know why they don't care? It's not that they don't care or we don't care. We're burned out. We've been overworked. We are not setting correct boundaries, or however you want to call it. We're not doing. The organization isn't holding the people well enough, you know, in different capacities. I also have one more thing to add because I don't exactly know. I mean, and I don't want to assume. And so one of the things is that what's important to me as a woman of color, so I identify as, you know, Ojibwe and whatever, if I am the only woman of color at an organization, there's already in many places this feeling of, I have to work a little bit more just to to prove that I'm as good. And I'm only speaking for me, not not all women of color feel this, but I want you to pay attention to it because there is that. And so are we only making our bilingual advocates like, oh, that's shove it, giving them more work, and we just don't have anything to do with bilingual, you know, speaking people or people who do not speak English, or, you know, being aware of all of those things, and making sure that we're not just always taking care of our, like the way that our community really is looks is mirrored by our organization.
Mm. Mm.
Anybody have any comments or anything else to add or any thoughts of what we were just speaking about?
One thing that because I work for a culturally specific program, so therefore majority all of the staff are from our communities. They're all from the Asians and Pacific Islander communities. We have diverse languages. But one thing that sometimes that kind of unite us is this issue of boundaries, right? We have a very different definition of boundaries. So I think if you are working with a diverse community, you also have to understand this diversity of what boundaries looks like for that individual from a certain community. Because for us, so that's why I think Guadalupe, you use the word relatives, right? For us is sisters, right? They are like becomes family members. So when you think about family, sometimes there's no boundaries. So just being real about it. So I think just knowing and understanding the complexity of our different communities, the cultural, you know, I know Kelly is an anthropologist, so she understands like each culture have this context, they have this different kind of like what it will look like, how they will like perceive certain things. So it's the same thing as boundaries. Because when we are, for example, if I am talking to a woman who is a newly arrived refugee from, let's say, Burma, right? And I talk about boundaries. I say, I only have 1 hour with you. She'll be like looking at me like, what? Like, what do you mean? You know, that's very like not very family-like, or even not accepting their gifts, right? So if someone, usually our organizations say you cannot accept gifts because, you know, policy, whatever. So maybe there might be a way where like, oh, you can bring food, we could eat together. So there are different ways, I think, that for me, a good, effective advocate, especially who is working in in an organization that is working with a very diverse community is also understanding those intricacies of those communities that you will serve. Because so then you will not offend, you will not, you will ask, did I do that right? Did I say that right? And also knowing that that community also will be as diverse, right? So when we think about Asians, it could be an Asian American that's really Americanized, right? So there might be like, had been here for like fourth generation. So they might have a different perspective of what boundaries are. So I just want to highlight that, because sometimes I think we're forgetting that how we define certain practices is based on mainstream perspective definition, and that is already excluding certain communities.
Yeah, and just a little bit of, and I don't know who's on here who knows this, and I'm not trying to be condescending about like saying you guys don't know nothing about this, but when I'm speaking from the tribal aspect of the Native American, like people a lot of times think that natives only live on reservation or in rural communities, and the truth is we're in a lot of urban areas. Like there was the Relocation Act that literally like baited us to get off those lands and go into big cities. And so you'll have indigenous people living amongst you all the time, and some look like me, and some will look like Mira, and some look like Erica, and some look like Kelly, and some like we can be passable and interchangeably of our visual characteristics. And so what I want to say about that is just visiting with my own community members and my own relatives throughout different tribes is the feeling of being welcomed, of seeing, and sometimes there is not a federally recognized tribe in your state, in certain states. And so but that doesn't mean that somebody that doesn't live there decided to, or is far away from home, doesn't still see a mirror of who they are. And so a lot of times, and I'm just going to say this because my gut says to say this, is that to make sure, or just to say that not all Indigenous Native people want to go to their programs if they even have them. Minnesota has 11 tribes, and not all but one have a sexual assault program, or a dual program. And all of them range for very different, we have like 4 Dakota tribes, and the remaining are Ojibwe. And so those are, and they're different in each part. So I guess I just wanted to like do a little shout out for my relatives of like, if they walked through your organization, would they see a mirror of something of who they are in your organizations? Or is there some extra information you would like to know or could learn on to get a better idea of like the history of what happened in your area, to know why or why not there's even a tribe there? So I just wanted to say that, because I think that a lot of times certain communities get really like hyper visualized in media, and some would get like really like are ignored, only when certain things happen. And so in order to be an effective advocate is paying attention to all of the who's always in the news and who's never in the news, and who gets justice and who never gets justice. So.
I know you are all like thinking like, how is this all connected with effective advocacy? It really is, because for me, how Guadalupe had stated it is really when we, for example, when we are hiring staff, especially doing the direct victim services, right? We don't look at the education. We look at their education. We look at their connection with the community. Are they cultural insiders? Do they have the language skills? Have they done community work? Right. So those are sometimes are the most important thing, because they already have the skills. So I'm also like adding another component to what Guadalupe is saying, is not sometimes just hiring someone. For example, like if you want to reach out to the Latino community, not just someone who speaks Spanish who they learned from college, right? But it's someone like maybe do not even have a bachelor's degree, or maybe just got a GED, but they have the skill of being really great advocate, effective. They understand. They're like anthropologists, right? They are the cultural insiders, can do the work, can have the language. So for me as well, is like I think leadership should also be looking at those folks that are also sometimes are forgotten, ignored, because they might not have the right education. So but then they are great advocates. Like for example, at Monsoon, we have staff like who might have an MSW, but then there are staff who are still getting their GED because they came in as a refugee, but they are like the best advocates because they know, understand the community that they are serving, right? Guadalupe, got something to add?
I do. I actually wanted to ask all of the group, and they can put it in the chat or they can say it out loud. What is something either you personally or your organization did that was kind of like outside the menu, helping a survivor of sexual violence that you're really proud of?
Oh, I like that. Or do you even have a menu?
So I'll share something that we haven't done, but something that we're working on, is that we recently had a female same-sex assault, and some of the hospital staff weren't sure how to handle that. And so we are working on adjusting our protocols to make sure the specific needs of those victims are met, because the assault is somewhat different and somewhat unique in additional needs that might need to be met, or evidence that needs to still be collected. And just the overall stigma of being in a rural place where certain populations are still not accepted or treated equally, but yet they still need to be have those services. And so we're working on changing our protocols to advocate to make sure that they're still receiving everything that they need, if that makes sense.
That's great, Regina. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else that would like to share something that's kind of like a new territory or a new outside the box that they're really proud of supporting sexual assault survivors? Are people seeing a lot of sexual assault survivors like right now during the pandemic? Like, how's that showing up?
We haven't had as many calls, of course. We're just open back up to do in-person services at the hospital. So our calls have been very limited. We've even, with our SART team, tried to reach out to individual agencies that serve victims and survivors to try to figure out ways to do, because not everybody wants to talk to somebody on the phone, and still with COVID, not everybody is comfortable with having somebody else in the room with them either.
Mhm.
So I just think it's important, to continue to have those conversations to make sure that we can meet needs however it works for the victim.
Mhm. Thank you, Regina.
Yeah.
Leslie said that they have more sexual assault victims call the hotline. Has anybody needed to get more volunteers or more staff, or however you, for their hotline, or you just keep it the same for what you've always had? Okay, here's another question about a hotline then. How do you effectively build a relationship on the phone?
Yes, good question. Or even via Zoom.
Or Zoom? Yeah.
Zoom, because we're doing online work, right? Yeah. How do you do that?
We are still seeing some people in person. We're going to court with people, but we've been trying to do a lot of the stuff by phone. And I just find it so much more difficult to communicate concern and really to develop, that relationship with people. It's just not the same as in person. It doesn't feel the same.
I agree. What do you find that's really hard, Heather, about it? Like personally, or just maybe generally, if you want to speak about that.
Well, I guess, the conversations can, they can be difficult. And, when someone's in your space, I just feel like you have that connection. You can show them that concern to make them feel comfortable. And I think they understand your support. Whereas when you're talking to someone on the phone, I don't know, I think it's harder to read each other, and for them to trust you and for them to feel comfortable, with even sharing some of the information, to feel supported.
Yeah.
And you certainly try to do all of that, but to me, there's just something about being able to, look at someone, for them to for them to really understand you, and vice versa, to really understand the person's situation, I think is different, when you're talking to them on the phone as well.
Thank you. Anybody else? Body language, microaggressions.
More questions? Body language and yeah. I have a question. What does effective advocacy looks like for victims and survivors of sexual violence, based on your experiences? What does it look like?
I will share. I recently advocated for a client whose perpetrator was found not guilty. But I think in the fact that someone believed her and supported her throughout that process, even though the judicial process didn't end up the way we wanted it to, I still think she felt empowered by just having that support system, and knowing that somebody believed her. So I would say that is really defined by the client feeling like their needs were met despite the outcome.
And the justice system is the hardest one, right? It's the most frustrating one, it's the hardest one, it's the most difficult. Yeah. Anyone else?
All right, y'all, we've been asking you guys a lot of questions. So now it's your turn.
God.
Now it's your turn to ask either us, the rest of the colleagues, or the facilitators. Now you can now ask us some questions on this topic. Just in this Zoom room, there's a lot of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of expertise. What is something that you're like, this is why I came to this. This is why I signed up. It wasn't for it wasn't for the certificate you're going to get at the end. It was because you wanted, this topic was a little bit of something for you. You could have did something else.
Yeah.
So let's get what you want out of it. Heather.
Well, something that y'all were talking about has really struck home for me. And I think it's feeling, like when working with domestic violence victims, it feels like there's a lot of concrete things that we can do. Or sexual assault victims, it seems a little harder. And just like someone had mentioned about, self-care.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be interested, in knowing, how we could give something to them as far as, I don't know. I don't even know how to ask what I'm saying, and I guess maybe there isn't anything concrete, but, actual things that they can do to take care of themselves. I don't know if that makes sense.
For staff, right? You're saying for the staff,
No,
for
for,
the survivor,
yes.
for the survivor.
I have a suggestion, but I'm going to leave it to the rest of the group
And
if somebody has.
Okay.
something
I
to
think part of it too is, if you see someone, it's not like there's a lot of people. If there were a lot of people going through a situation at the same time, maybe yoga, or maybe getting a group to do something. But so often when you see someone with a need, there aren't other people really to connect with during that time. I don't know. I don't even know if that makes sense.
So what you're saying is, like, domestic violence has a lot of tangible needs that you can provide for clients. Sexual violence is a little more difficult because it's a lot of nuanced. Not only that, you may not have a lot of sexual violence clients all at once where you can just have them all go to group or participate in yoga. So you're asking, what are some tangible things that you can give or do for sexual violence clients? Is that correct?
I guess. And I guess that's a tough question, because I guess the point is there's not really a lot of tangible things that we can necessarily do.
Well, can I show you something real quick? And I'm gonna try to use my whiteboard real quick. Let's see. Let's see if I can do this. Let's see. Is it doing my annotate? Oh, it's not doing it. Oh, how do we get off this?
You might have to there. Well,
it's working. I don't know how to get this off.
there should be a blackboard, right?
Yeah.
A whiteboard in here.
This is the whiteboard, but for some reason there's like a little, I'm gonna stop sharing because until I figure it out. Okay, so I was gonna try to give you so one of the things that we do, okay, so and just because I'm gonna share this with you doesn't mean, for one, you can't use this, because this is human nature, okay, but it does come from my culture, like the medicine wheel. If anybody's familiar with the medicine wheel, it's a circle. I'm gonna do a little component. Okay, sorry for my drawing. But so there's a circle and it's got like 4 quadrants in it, right? There are 4 equal quadrants. And in this quadrants, this would be the person, right? The whole person. So there's mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual.
Safe space, how may I help you?
Oh, Janelle,
A
mute.
package.
Janelle, you have
Okay.
There we go. I muted it. Okay. So then have your people you're working with develop their own self-care plan. If in those 4 quadrant spaces for their spiritual, because then they get to decide what spiritual means to them. Maybe it is church. Maybe it's like, no, I like to walk in the woods. Maybe it's like, I need to sit by the water. Maybe I need to go to maybe mosque. I need to do whatever it is. It could be a whole bunch of different stuff, right? How they take care of their spirit, their spirituality piece. And then go to the next quadrant would be mental. How do they take care of their mental piece? What does that mean for them? Does that mean that they read books more? They take a class on something they always wanted to do? They, they're whatever it is. They do Sudoku. I'm not sure. It could be whatever they want to do. Do that with the next four quadrants: the physical and the emotional. Now, have them do that maybe once a week because they might change. This is my self-care for maybe it's even this is just what I need today. Today, my self-care quadrant is like I'm only taking care of only my emotional piece, and I'm not drinking enough water. I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm not eating well. Maybe because of the trauma, they don't have any fresh food or food because of maybe the violence has stopped them from having a job, it interrupted income somehow, you know what I mean? All kinds of things. So once you get a thing of that gives them the self-power to be like, oh, it also gives them an example they get to regulate all whatever happens for them, and which is important because sometimes it's so overwhelming. All you feel is your mental, or you only stay in your mental house, or you only stay in your emotional house, and you don't necessarily go and visit your spiritual and your physical house a lot, you know? So that's one exercise that you could work. You can do that with your colleagues at work to be like, hey, what's your self-care plan for today or this week look like? What do you need to do? You know, and then be kind to yourself when you don't follow it, and say, it's okay, just keep trying, you know, because I'm only speaking from that for myself, that sometimes when I'm like, I write this, like, and I'm going to drink water. I'm going to drink like, 8 glasses a day. And I'm going to make sure I get like this much sleep. And then when I don't, I'm like, and then I feel all bad about myself. And I'm like, no, I'll just try again. I'll sneak in a 20-minute nap. that'll even that out.
So what did you say? Can you also add sexual pleasure in that? Because I think, right? Because we always forget. We tend to forget about when we are doing advocacy work is these, how then do we give pleasure back? Sexual pleasure back. How then do we get that back? Or for survivors, they might not think about that, but that is their right for me. That is the right for them to feel sexual pleasure, orgasm. How do you get that back prior to the trauma? Or if you are a child sexual abuse survivor, how do you learn those? Right? So I think, can you add those in that?
I love that idea, because one of the things that I didn't realize that I was doing when I was volunteering for a sexual assault program was that we were the place that you talk about all the trauma and violence and bad stuff associated with being a sexual being. And so I felt like as an advocate, I felt like, could we talk about this? Or do we only have to talk about this? I was even confused as being a volunteer advocate, but like, well, what if they want to, like, what do we tell people if they're like, hey, listen, I want to know more about how to repair this for myself, or be, like more identifying of like what I need to know about myself. I love that, Mira. That is so important. And that would, and the person can choose what, if it's going to go into their physical house or spiritual house,
Right.
duality piece, because it all, actually, it all goes into almost all of them, doesn't it?
Yeah. Because we tend to forget that piece, don't we? Like we only think, and that is like the most harmed. That is like what was harmed. And that is not what we're like focusing on. And I think this issue then of like we are so hesitant to talk about sex. Um, you know, so I think this might be something that like something that could be added in your advocacy work is when we think about effective advocacy is looking at those pieces that are usually not there because we are so afraid to look at it or to discuss it, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, Mira. I'm not gonna
Well,
lie.
I'm all about sexual pleasure because it's so important.
Life is too short not to be. I'm sorry.
Right? Yeah, because it's so
Love to
important.
show you.
Yeah.
I have one more exercise to show you, or to talk to you about. Okay, so let's go back to that medicine wheel piece. If so, I know this is like a little. They're supposed to be equal quadrants. I apologize. So, imagine. Okay, so here's a check-in for yourself or somebody that you're working with. So do a whole circle. So this is you, right? And then you can ask the person, so out of this, draw a quadrant or draw a piece of a pie or whatever, however you want to say it to the person, of how much do you think you actually are taking care of your emotional state? All right, so this person's like, well, okay. So then let's just say I'm the person you're working with and this is what I draw, okay? So the next question you can add is like, how much are you taking care of your physical state? Like sleeping, eating well, whatever that means to you. So this person might just do this. So half the time, so this is their physical and emotional, right? Now you can go spiritual. How much are you taking care of your spiritual self? Well, that's even, for me, that's even smaller than the rest of them. And then how much are you taking care of your physical space? Oh my gosh, that's even smaller than spiritual. I ain't gonna lie, I just walk to the car. That's it. That's all I do. They get up go get a snack. So that's even spirit. So those are my quadrants. If this person is being honest, they'll be like, wow, okay. Is that a balanced person? Because what the heck am I filling that in with? What is it? Then what is this? And then you can get to another thing of like, oh, that's all my overwhelm. That's all my bad feeling. That's all my like stress. That's all my like, I'm not enoughness. That's all my whatever. And you can start working on that and then say, well, what do we need to do to make sure that all your quadrants get as balanced as you can? So that way you're taking care of all of your full self. And that's just another exercise. I like to do that sometimes because I like to do that daily to say, how am I feeling at that time? So it's kind of like, what do I need to work on? Or what do I need to pay attention to? Or pay attention to less. So. And then, or this could be like Mira, like, oh, that's all the sex I'm having. I don't know. Doing all that stuff too.
Oh, Guadalupe. I'm like,
sorry, this is recording. I'm sorry.
And laughing is good, you know, like that's also like part of like strategies is you need to laugh and smile.
Having fun and play.
Yeah.
I mean, would that cross a boundary as an advocate if the survivor you're working with is like, you know what, I haven't been to like, I haven't swing on I need to go swing on a swing. Would that be like, oh, okay, well, have fun with that. And then let's check in after you're done and then we'll go ahead and whatever. Or would you be like, where you want to go?
Yeah.
Where do we need to do this? And can we still do, and I bet you the advocacy and the talks and the things are going to feel so different. Just like when we're talking to kids and we have fidgets and we have different things and we have art and we have all of those things. How do we incorporate them every time that we go ahead and meet with somebody? One of the things that an advocate did with my, when I volunteered, was because we were only being called into the hospital. And so this person, and I know that policies are different and whatnot, but this person had like an activity bag. And this in this activity bag, there was like nail polishes, there was like things like coloring books or something like that, that had whatever, because she's like, hey, I brought this. Is there anything in here you want to do while we're waiting for law enforcement or the exam or, you know, the results to come back or however it is. And it just made the person feel like, and if they said no, they declined, cool. But the fact that this person had brought those things there just to be like, you want to paint your nails? Should we paint our nails right now while we're waiting? Do you want to color? Do you want to do these things? Thinking outside of the box of what to do and how to create relationship in a very short period of time when you really don't have a lot of time to build rapport and trust. You know, if you're just walking in for that call and you're a volunteer, like what are some of the strategies that you can do? Oh, whoopee cushions. That's cool. We just have a little under 15 minutes left. Excuse me. Is there any, I know Heather, thank you for asking that. Is there anybody else that has any like questions to pose the group that we could strategize around?
I have a quick question because I'm an intern and I'm learning so much from you guys. It's amazing. My question that I've asked pretty much everybody that I've had like a one-on-one interview with, I ask, and this goes with your boundaries, how do you advocate for yourself? And I know you with the wheel and the quadrants, that's an excellent way. You said you do that daily, you know, you figure out where you're at in your headspace, but how I think I take in so much of other people's emotions. This was a conversation once we had on a Zoom that I'm an empath, and it's very difficult for me personally to separate, and I'll think about things and like ruminate on it for way too long, longer than is healthy. And I'm always curious, how do you guys advocate for yourself? And how do you, I don't know, not let it like break you down over time?
When I find myself being overwhelmed, I'll ask for mental health day.
Awesome.
And also, Kelly, we just had a really great, for the month of April, we had a really great presentation by Jeremy from Raft, and you can find that video on our YouTube channel, shameless plug, but it was a self-care video, but the content of it was the importance of values and saying no in a positive way. And he went through a really great presentation about people like us who really have a hard time separating and saying no. And what he did in that presentation was he had us all do an activity, and I can probably send you the workbook, but it has you take a look at your values and stick to that, right? So find your maybe 5 most important things, your 3 most important things, and always stick to that, right? So if it's family, if it is pets, nothing can interfere with that for you, right? So if something is impeding on your time with your family, on your time with your pets, or something like that, there is a way to still like say no, but do it in a positive way. So I'll send you the link for that.
Thank you, Erica. I have a physical thing for you can do. So it's harder. Okay, so but even on Zoom, you can still do this. And you might have to reposition your camera. So I was a part of this Indigenous Tools for Living by Shirley Turcott. And she talks about, so what we do know is that when somebody's yelling at you or somebody's showing tons of joy at you, there's energy, right? There's energy being put on you. So when you're hearing something hard, and I want you to practice this with people that you currently have, if you are in space with people, go ahead and try this. When you're hearing something hard, just tilt your body a little bit, be present. Don't let it hit you. I want everybody, if they could even just try it just a little bit, like tilt your body and let somebody talk at you and it just kind of talks past you and goes to the land. I already, just by turning, I almost feel like there's something off my chest just by talking to you in this kind of way. It feels lighter. So don't let people talk trauma into your heart, into your gut, even into your genitals or into your head. Do it sideways. Literally physically move your body, be present with them, but don't let them, and when they want to, just turn your body. I'm still paying attention. You still have my, we're still having eye contact if that's important, but whatever you're gonna say lands on the ground and not on my chest and in my gut. Practice that for a whole week. Intentionally practice that and see how different when things land on you, you will not take them physically in your body. And pay attention to those things. So when we're, and do that on Zoom, do that in person, just tilt your body just a little bit and you will feel a little bit different. Another thing that I want to share with you too is that how many times has a little kid gifted you a rock? How many rocks do you have in your house? How many rocks do you have in your car? How many rocks do you have around your, like around your space, in your office? I have like tons of stones. These stones are like grandfathers, right? These are the oldest relatives we have. These are like Mother Earth is the biggest rock. We get to live on her and she takes care of us. These are our grandfathers. And this is, you don't have to do this teaching. I'm just sharing you a little bit of mine. You can do a stone wash. Wherever you feel too heavy in your heart, you can take that stone, ask its, like, please help clean my heart, help clean my gut, help clean my mind, whatever. You can do it on your forehead, you can do it on your crown chakra, wherever you feel the heaviest, wherever you think that it needs to, and just sit there. And then go ahead and thank it because it's taking something out of you. These are almost like natural little energy sponges, and I'm not even kidding you. They put it there, and then you can go set it out. You can have a basket of rocks by your house. You can have a basket of rocks. You can have a big rock before you get to your house so that, let's say when you're out, when we start to go back into working, you can put your energy on that rock and say, I leave whatever is not good for me outside of my home or not outside of my office or whatever. I leave all of that what is not mine to carry, I leave it here. Thank you for taking it for me. And you're intentionally putting it down because that's not all for us to keep. And I think that in this movement and in our movement, we think that if we are not carrying other people's trauma where it doesn't weigh us down, then we're not effective advocates. That doesn't mean the same thing as us not having compassion or empathy. That doesn't mean we have to hold it. You know what I'm saying? We have our own to hold. And even if we don't hold somebody else's the way we think we're supposed to hold it, doesn't make us a less of an advocate. We have to be present. And if I'm not whole, you're not going to get the best advocate out of me. I'm going to show up tired. I'm going to show up like confused. I'm going to show up all kinds of not myself. So the best you is taking care of you before you can even help anybody else. And I know that we always say that, but yeah.
Like we need to practice it, right? Yeah. It's same as like, it's so interesting, Guadalupe, when you're talking about like leaving, like washing the stone, the rocks. It's the same as like the Asian culture. There's certain culture that we don't bring our shoes in. Like we leave our shoes in front of the door because we don't want to bring in the stuff that's from the outside inside the house. So there's certain rituals and practices that we do that has meanings. There's a reason why, right? So it's so, I love that you shared that, Guadalupe. That was wonderful.
Water is a very important medicine too.
Yeah.
speak love into your water. There's scientific evidence that when you speak beautiful prayer, love into your water, it changes the molecules of the water. Go ahead and speak love into that, and then drink it intentionally. Drink it.
Mm-hmm.
Shower when you had a hard day. Imagine all of that negative energy literally going down the drain off of you onto your heart. Go sit in water if that's what you need to do, you know, because sometimes when I'm like really stressed out, I love doing dishes and I didn't know why. It was because I was in water. I was constantly in water.
Yeah.
Well, we are at 3 minutes to the end. I really appreciate talking to you guys. It was good.
Right. This was amazing. And I'm probably going to have to ask both Mira and Guadalupe back because this conversation was very, very good and it felt good. And we got a lot of good information out of it. So if you guys are open, we might drag you along for another.
Yeah, I have more experientials of how to like help survivors with like dealing with the unpacking the overwhelm or unpacking trauma a little bit.
Right, that, and I would also like you to come back and talk a little bit about, I was actually typing you something in the private chat, like, ooh, we have a multicultural piece to this that we want to talk about, and how to engage people in your community who are from other cultures,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you talked a little bit about how you can have American Indian people in your community, and you may not be serving them because what, you don't have a reservation on your community, or you don't feel like whatever the reason. But I wanted to dive into that more, like, because we're in North Carolina and we have a huge American Indian indigenous presence here. And I know for sure that they're not all just on the reservations and the areas that we know that they are mainly in. So I would love for you to come back and talk about that with us.
Yes, definitely.
So I really appreciate both of you all being here. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mira, for being able to be flexible and to bring this one back to us. This was really important and I'm glad we did. So I put for today the link into the chat for the survey for today. In order to receive your certificate, you have to complete the survey. And I had also put into the chat, I'll drop it in also again, but we have registration is now open for our biennial conference. And so, yeah, there we go. And so make sure that if you all are planning to do that, one thing that I found out that may be helpful is if you receive SASP funding from us, that you can use the SASP funding for the conference. So thank you for that. We will see you all back here in 2 weeks. We will have at that time one of NC CASA staff, Chris Croft, who is going to be, yeah, right, who is going to be doing a wonderful presentation on emergent spaces with Montia and Shireen. So we look forward to that. And yeah, I will be in touch, Guadalupe and Mira, to see if you guys would be willing to come back for the other portions of the remaining series. Yes, webinar in this series.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing time with us, y'all.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good one.
All right.
Right. Thank you, everyone.